All right, we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to the Illinois Green Party series. I'm your host, David Rych. I have a recurring guest on, Regan Parenton.
It's French, yeah.
Parenton. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fabulous. I'm really well today,
Good,
actually.
good, good. You look good. So, all right. I haven't been on the show in probably close to 2 months now. Somebody else took the reins for a couple shows, but yeah, I took a kind of a summer hiatus here. So this is my first attempt back after a long, arduous summer of doing other things. So for all you viewers out there, thanks for coming back around. Let me put this up there for you. So we got Regan Parenton on there.
You can
There you
find me
go.
on YouTube. Yeah, I have a YouTube
Find you on
channel.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, go to YouTube. Check him out. He's got a lot of really, really cool videos and lots of very interesting information concerning climate change, the environment, and other things. He's called a doomer, right?
Or realist. I think
A
realist
realist.
is more
Okay.
appropriate.
I when I advertised this show, I just said a climate change tracker to kind of keep it not so uh dark. So people are like, well, I don't want to listen to a doomer. That's weird. So invite him in here and then give them the information so they can think for themselves about what's going on. So before the show, Reagan and I were just discussing some certain things concerning like how we got here, how did we get here, kind of thing. And like there's probably a bajillion different theories on that, but I think it's an interesting discussion to say the least. And I mentioned that I had many times, 4 or 5 times, I had people from Deep Green Resistance, Lear, Keith, Derek, Jensen, and Max Welbert on. Max has been on several more times than just the DGR for other, because he's like a real environmental activist. He's the guy who sits on top of a crane so they can't use it for like a week. I'm like, he's that guy. He's cool. Yeah, no, he's awesome. He's coming on again soon, a couple weeks from now. But one of their claims as an organization is that like the troubles really started with like the beginning of civilization and more specifically agriculture. And for some people that's a pretty tough pill to swallow because like, what do you mean? Like my apple has destroyed civilization? That's ridiculous. And of course that's obviously very oversimplified. And I understand what their point is, and like I said to Reagan, I don't think that they're categorically wrong. I think it's one part of many other things. The development of human civilization over time and technology and stuff like that, and just ignorance of like what nature is and what it does and how the patterns and cycles of nature work. And instead of working in harmony with nature, we took a turn and we decided to go against it. Like, no, we're going to commandeer the land. Thanks anyway. And we're going to do with it what we want. Thanks anyway. Instead of relying on you to provide food for us. And that's not a terrible situation. I get that. I mean, survival in wild nature is very difficult. And human beings with their frontal lobe, if you will, and the development of human reason, rationality, mathematics, stuff like that, logic. I mean, we just started doing things on our own. We are creative beings. We create things not just for survival, but for other things as well. That's not something you can take away from human nature and still have a human being. That's what we do. We create. Now we've done it very irresponsibly, for sure, and now we're here, suffering the consequences of that. And so, Reagan, why don't you kind of take the reins there and tell me what you think about all that and more?
Ooh, that's conflicting. That's a dichotomy that my subscribers have also suffered with over the years because I post a lot of music and creative expression on my channel,
Right.
and it's hard not to awe at the novelty of human ingenuity and I would say in a sense like our highest being. Like to create is like your highest
It's a
state.
godlike quality, like
Right.
literally.
It means all of something else in your house, right, is all the dots are connecting and you're like putting something and creating something new in the world. Yeah, you understand that.
Yes.
Maslow's hierarchy. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we are capable of producing just mind oozing composures or pieces of artwork or movies that make like still movies pumping out like left and right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love
Oppenheimer,
movies.
still, and it's like,
Right.
what? This is going on. Meanwhile, we have a rapacious tendency to just consume and destroy
Yeah.
everything in sight, and in as a consequence of that. Because in order to do all these experiments, all those, that's art too. Like everything, creative expression, it takes so much energy. So that's been as a creative person, I think that stuff. There's millions of artists, creators right now who are like, damn, am I like destroying the planet doing this right
Right.
now? Like that's a
Right.
simple,
Right.
explanation.
No.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
tough
No, it
pill to
is.
swallow. It's a tough pill to I mean, I'm still not over it.
Right. No, and I never want to like quash creativity, but like, I mean, when you're being, I mean, there's, and a lot of it has to do with not type, but scale, the scale at which we're, digging up the earth in order to provide, goods for people and stuff like that. And some pretty superfluous, unnecessary goods at that. And there's so many different facets and elements to the human condition. And, um, that we all come like bound with certain like both positive and negative dispositions. I mean, greed is not a good thing overall, and that could be like a vice underpinning to a lot of the problem that's going on. Is it's all profit driven. Like, oh, I just want more money, so I'm going to go ahead and tear down this forest. Well, that's not okay. You can get more quality of life without tearing down a forest. And we can talk about money too. Money's one of the most annoying things on the planet because it's supposed to be just a simple tool to make the transaction of goods and services easier instead of having to haul my cow across the village to trade for a bag of wheat. I can just bring you a couple pieces of paper. But now it's this thing. It's like the new god. I mean, it's just we live for it, we die for it, we kill for it. We can't live with it. If there's anything in the real world that is like the Matrix in the movie, it's money. We can't see past it. We think it's the most like real and necessary thing ever. Only a few people can see past it. Money does not have any internal value. Literally, it doesn't. There's no such thing, objectively speaking, as monetary value. And there are certain objectively existing values in my estimation. There's mathematical value, there's moral value, there's logical value, creative value, that kind of thing. But like, monetary value is a false system entirely. This whole notion that $1 equals like, say, this pen is always going to be a false statement because there's no such thing as value, monetary value. This has value to me. It helps me create it, write, communicate. It does all sorts of wonderful things for me. The money side of it does absolutely nothing. So anyway, that's my little anti-money rant. What do you think?
Sadly, that social engineering, let's say that this object does, um, over hundreds and thousands of years since Mayan, like people have been using some forms of currency, pesos throughout most of human history. Let's say
Yeah.
they were right that we're so it's almost I would almost argue that it's become part of our genome, our
Mm-hmm.
understanding of it, our intimate understanding of it, no matter what age, like you get it and you know what it is. We would have had to go back and rewrite the textbooks on like human civilization. Yeah, you can go further back than that, right? Money, and then as that fabricated through time, the conflated meaning of money, and that's how we exchange goods and services, or that's the only thing we could think of. Get creative enough. Maybe another civilization they would use like a unit based system, like I'll
Mm-hmm.
trade 500 units of nickel for 300 ore of this. Like that's real sci-fi and crazy to work out, but this is the best we could do with our little noggins, I mean.
Yeah, and like as you're mentioning the sci-fi possibilities, I'm thinking of like Star Trek: The Next Generation, where they had gotten rid of money because they had somebody invented the, well, I don't know what they call it, the replicator or something like that, where basically you could just ask the computer to make something and it just makes it. So
Yeah,
there was no longer need for labor, and if no
right.
labor, you don't need money. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
well, also in Logan's Run is is another example. You can just summon everything, and but the caveat is you die at like 28, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so I don't know, man. I'm kind of feeling that. I was gonna lament on my age in my 30s now, but obviously that would be a fallacy considering I know you're older than me. But I liked that concept when I was younger. I was like, oh, that's cool, interesting. Anyways,
Well, it's because
money.
you hadn't hit 28 yet.
No, of course, right. I haven't. Yeah.
That you got to 28, you're like, that was fast.
Yeah,
I
of
want more,
course.
right?
Yeah. And then I'm like, damn, this starts to suck now. Like, this is pretty lame. I met a 30-year-old the other day. I was like, have you had your existential crisis yet? He's like, yeah, multiple times. Just
No,
life.
it's true. No, I went through that plenty of times. A massive fear of death and all sorts of things. You know, as I get older, I become more acquainted with it, and it seems I don't seem to like currently at least safely sitting in the safety of my home. I'll admit that I don't really seem to like really have a fear of death anymore. Um, I just philosophically, it's something I dealt with pretty intensely for a long time. And I just kind of again philosophically came to the conclusion that well, I became confident that the Bible-based religions are not true, and therefore, like, there is no hell. So I got rid of that fear, right?
Oh, well, that's
Um,
yeah.
you
So you
know,
were
and that's
indoctrinated probably. That's called child abuse. But go
no, I
ahead.
agree. I was growing up Roman Catholic in an Italian family. You know, it wasn't great. But so therefore, I decided like, well, like getting rid of that whole hell, eternal damnation part of it. Um, and when I die, either nothing happens, which okay, there's I'm not there to even care, or something wonderful is going to happen. That's my options right now. So
You
okay,
turn into meat sauce like all the rest. Meat sauce is like Soylent Green. It's just all of life is you're just it's the cycle.
yeah, it's just
Oh
yeah, it
gosh, we're
takes you
not
back in
going
and
into Taoism here now. Okay,
hmm
keep this
hmm
light.
yeah, no, for sure. Um, so with your YouTube channel, it's getting some serious ground there. I mean, you got over 1,000 viewers, subscribers, not just viewers. I mean, probably more than 1,000 viewers because not all viewers subscribe, right? Is that right?
Of course not. I have returning viewers that are not subscribed, even though I
Right.
remind them 100 times. Yeah.
So that's good, and I've seen many of your videos before, and it's been a couple weeks since I watched the last one, admittedly, but you have like really solid information, and you really do a very nice job of explaining it all and laying it all out. It's very helpful. In fact, we became acquainted because you responded to an interview I had with Dr. Guy McPherson, who is a world-renowned scientist, PhD in biology, and he's got all sorts of interesting scientifically warranted theories. um and he's kind of shunned, I guess, in the major parts of the scientific arenas, because he's got a very uh doomsday sort of theory going on. He gives us till
He's not
2026,
afraid
and
to tell the truth.
he's not afraid to tell the truth, and he's not afraid to make predictions based on evidence and stuff like that. Now admittedly, predictions are difficult to make in any way, shape, or form. But like, there's all the evidence for like climate change is existing itself is overwhelming, and that conversation's over. The implications of it, again, they're severe. I mean, look at what's happened recently, man. I mean, major flooding and fires across the globe. It's unbelievable. Look what happened in Hawaii, and look, there's another like 10-foot wave storm, hurricane coming in Florida.
In Tampa.
You know,
Yeah, I saw that.
yeah, Ideala. I don't remember. There was a name I hadn't recognized. But
Oh, there's gonna
anyway,
be
like
so many names in the next few years. You're just gonna they're all
they're
gonna
gonna have to
blend
make up
together.
names. Yeah, yeah. It's just insanity. The quantity and intensity of the storms that's undeniable too. That average has gone up considerably
Yeah, the
over the
Canadian
decades.
wildfires are mind blowing.
They're still happening, by the way. Just so you know, folks.
I
Canada's still on fire. Greece is on
yeah.
fire. I don't know about the Hawaii. I think that fire is out or pretty much out. But look at the photos and the damage it's done. Holy cow! It looks like a post-apocalyptic scenario. And then Biden offers each person $700. Like that's going to do diddly. But anyway, it's crazy what's happening, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And we're still developing. People are still building, communities and towns too close to the coasts. And, well, that's probably one of the first things that's going to happen is people are going to have to move away from the shorelines, because they're just getting destroyed. And they are, you could look up video of NASA satellite photos of beachfront in Hawaii. Just look that up. And like, they had one from like 25 years ago. Let's say that the beachfront was this big, and like now it's like this big. Like, it's just, you can see it going away. They have the satellites. They're watching all this happen. This isn't a joke, folks. Okay, this is actually occurring. And what's kind of a bittersweet situation is, and I don't mean to be mean to anybody, but like, these people tend to like annoy me, is that the rich people are the first ones that are going to have to do something to like survive, because they're the ones that like take up the coastal areas for the most part. Um, And so they're going to have to go back into like the other communities off the coast and like probably deal with the rest of us poor people, and see how that works. But like all sorts of climate refugees and stuff like that's happening more and more. That's happening all around the world too. It's insane. And you still have, I don't know if you did pay attention to the Republican debates at all, or Vivek Ramajari, I think his name is. What an idiot. He just, like, the first thing he says is, I will be the first one on stage to say that climate change is a hoax. I'm like, wow, man, that's crazy. Not even like that, like maybe it's being exaggerated or, that kind of thing. The predictions aren't great. It's just a full-blown hoax. You know how dangerous that belief is? And this is what makes me angry. He's going to spread that crap like a viral meme. And people are going to buy it, and they're going to stop behaving in ways or buying things or not buying things that contribute to climate change even further. What do you think? I'm ranting.
Amazing. Just astonishing that we've arrived at this level of insanity, lack of, devoid of logic, critical thinking, reason, a demon haunted world. Carl Sagan, like straight up.
Great book.
Yeah. Like let's be real. Like none of the presidential candidates are qualified. Yes or
that's
no?
Just it. Yeah, they don't. They don't. Like, how could he possibly know that?
For what is coming to? We could be in a potential war in the next few years. Do we really want these people, running the ship? That's a recipe for disaster. If I ever read a fucking textbook, excuse me, but like for real, like that doesn't take much imagination to see suddenly in full scale invasion, grids going down, hashtag 5 years. I mean, we should be reminded that a climate clock in New York City it passed 6 years. I mean, we have less than 6 years, 5 years and something, according to them. But that's just one measurement, metric that we reach full blown 1.5. Though we know most of the, community, climate communities know like we could be breaching 1.5 here really shortly with
like by next year.
Yeah, I mean James Hansen's paper, James Hansen and Renee something. They put out this paper and it's like they detailed it all out, and we're in uncharted territory, uncharted waters. What could implicitly unfold? But as I was driving, or I was thinking about this call today, and I was thinking at some point, I just gotta. You can just go down I gotta go down the laundry list of checkbox items, of things that we're looking forward to, not looking forward to, but are about to explode in our face, like the AMOC shutting down, Doomsday Glacier breaking off and retreat melting, widespread crop failure, like all at once. Any one of these things are terrible, but they're all going to be occurring like dominoes in succession, and then throw war, and whatever is going on. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but like, dude, that's what we're all expecting in the next decade.
Yeah.
So all bets are off. I mean, money with my roommate, he's 73 years old, and he's like, he confidently believes the equalizer is coming, like that thing that's going to make money, people's savings accounts, debt, IRA, everything, the stock bond market, everything. And our debt is spiraling out of control in the States. Chris Hedges thinks that this empire would fall around like 2030 anyways.
Yeah.
Not even mentioning like climate change. He just thinks, and based off this election, it's like, geez, where are we going next? What is this country anymore? It's really
I watch a lot of Chris Hedges. I love Chris Hedges, and he's a very, very intelligent man.
Right. I'm not discounting anything he says. Yeah, you take heed to it because he's actually done his homework. You can't write him off. It's like, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. And I've seen some of his interviews concerning the 2030 deadline and the end of an empire and stuff like that. And it's hard to argue against his data and his interpretation of the data.
Sure. Yeah, you get it.
Yeah, no, I get it. 2030 seems like just like it's 6.5 years away, folks. Okay, so I mean, like it's in I'm 53, I'd only be 59 when it happened. If I survived that long, but I don't see why I wouldn't. It's only 6.5 years from now. And like again, like you said, like climate change aside, but not that it can be aside, but like just putting it aside, intellectually, thinking of all the other things that are going on. I mean, I just read an article about how there's like 15 banks like on the verge of like just collapsing in the country because of like all this, the way the system banking system is set up. Well, it's completely unsustainable. Like it can't
A
sustain
house of
itself.
cards. Yeah.
It's a house of cards, yeah. And it's just a ridiculous economic system in so many ways. There's also like socio-political tensions and turmoils. There are very highly educated people, not conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones, but I mean just very well-educated people who like study things like revolutions and civil wars and social civic upheaval. And a lot of them are saying that the American conditions in America are ripe for war. And there's also, you can see the tensions just between the left and the right in the streets. I watched a whole thing on like the militias that are popping up around the country, and there's mostly on the right side, but there's leftist militias too. There's still elements of, and it's not a centralized organization, so it's hard to call it an organization, but a movement. Antifa is like not having it with the Nazis, and they'll go up to a Nazi in the street and they'll kick the shit out of him to get him off the street. And I'm not entirely opposed to that. I don't like Nazis either. But my point being is that the society is in the streets is getting more and more violent, which is a bad sign. It's a sign that things are going badly, and the popularity of the discourse, the tension within the discussion between the left and the right is becoming more and more high profile, which fuels that fire. Now, I'm not
Right.
advocating for censorship or anything like that. I mean, I'm just pointing out what I see to be happening. And so like there's that element too, like just social strife, socio-political economic strife. That's another thing too. I mean, with the rise of unions seem to be having a better time current, like right now, like in the small little window of time, because Starbucks successes in Starbucks and stuff like that. But like, I mean, if you look into the labor movement back in the day before you had like the government regulating it, if you will, oh, it was violent, baby. It was very violent. Like,
Right.
when these business owners didn't comply to the demands of the workers, the workers just pretty much kicked the shit out of them. And then of course the owners of the businesses would hire like security guards and like is it Stevenson? So there's a famous one I can't remember. And then you just watch the battles in the streets. I'm talking with like bats and clubs and
Right.
guns. I mean, it was
22. They had like automatic 22 guns. Like,
that,
yeah.
you know
I
the
know,
Haymarket
and then
affair.
I'm wondering when that inflection point, when does that happen here? Because we are so overdue for that. And
Exactly.
instead of revolting, what I see is decay everywhere.
Right.
Everyone just imploding from the inside with drug abuse, depression, uh,
There's all that too.
addiction, the enemy, that the rot from the inside out, and mass
Yeah.
shootings. I mean,
No.
people taking out people in Florida, gunmen recently. You hear
That's
just
unbelievable.
it's I wanted to tweet, I wanted to make a post about that. It's like, don't do that. Go for the oil executives and the the tech CEOs. Go do that to them.
Yeah, there are people that are actually where that is warranted. I agree. And that was like a blatant racist attack. I mean, he had
For
like
real. Yeah,
a
obviously.
whole like doctrine on his website. He had swastikas on the gun he used. No, I mean, there's
Yeah,
no
pretty
ambiguity about
intense.
why he did it. And he shot himself at the end, which is fine by me. So but it's just terrible. But this to show that like extreme racism is alive and well in this country, and that crap happens like yearly, easily. And so the people, like a lot of people want to say that racism is passe in this country. No, it's not. Did you see the news yesterday? I mean, exactly. He killed 3 people just because they're black. That's why he did it.
Yeah, I mean, signs of it are everywhere. Economic collapse. 2 out of 5 small businesses couldn't pay their rent last month.
Wow.
Um, Storefronts, you see it everywhere. For lease going up. Office places to
Hmm.
office. What I'm saying, and the rot. So we're seeing all these economic, house of cards. These things are crumbling around us. But then you can see this when you go into these cities, or you can just go on YouTube. YouTube is so wonderful. I'm more leaning towards, yes, it's a good thing that I got on the platform. Um, but you can type in, Philadelphia at night, or, Toronto at night, Kingston, and people drive around the city and it just looks like zombies, just hordes of people, you know, no care, no service, like down, just need. And it's like, man, how do we turn this around? We have
I don't
so many
know.
surmounting problems.
It's true, Reagan, and like I'm thinking a lot. I'm not. I think we're referring to the same thing, but like I see, watch videos on YouTube as well about like homelessness and the drug addiction problems. So in the streets of San Francisco, and I spent 12 years in Portland, Oregon, and I left like 8 years ago, and it's just like when I go back to visit, you can see the homeless population just growing exponentially each time I get there. And if there's a simplicity in homelessness, and some people just chose to be homeless because of that, but you're talking about a very, very small amount of them. Some of them are mentally ill and just can't seem to get along in society, and in that case they need help. But a lot of like drug addiction and stuff like mass, I'm not talking about like pot or anything like that, that's ridiculous. But like I mean, the heroin addicts and meth addicts and stuff like that, that they need help, and it's because the like you said, it's just it seems insurmountable, and it seems like nobody seems to be doing anything to like really curb or cure it. I don't like, I mean, you hear about like in some areas where the cops just send in a bunch of cops, the police station send in a bunch of cops to like kick them off a certain area. Well, then what? Well, they got to go somewhere else. They can't,
Yes.
they don't just disappear. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
so like you remove them from this area because you're not having it. Then you're just going to go what? Kick, and you're just going to keep doing that. I mean, that doesn't seem humane or rational at all. And nobody seems to care about this problem. So that's another growing problem with like within the decay of the American empire. Is there's the homelessness problem and the drug addiction and just the alcoholism. I mean, alcoholism is a very large problem in America, by the way.
Yeah,
And I drink too. I drink. Don't get me wrong. Go ahead.
sure. Respectfully.
Yes, no, and like, and I probably I know I've hit it too hard too often, but I'm not in any sort of dire straits by any stretch. But like my point is that like in our society we have like a bajillion different problems going on, and they're huge problems. And like I listen to people like Ben Shapiro, and what a knob. He still thinks that like America is overall like the greatest country, and because nobody's standing up and saying, well, like, what about this and this and this and this and this? And what do you mean by American? Do you mean like what is done by Americans in America, like within the geographical borders? Is that what counts? Because if that's what counts, we got all sorts of problems. If you just mean the Constitution, we still have all sorts of problems. I don't know what some people are like. Well, America is this. Well, what does that mean? What do you mean by American? I don't know. There's 8,000 different ways of approaching that, right?
Man, that's a reminder how loony the world is that you brought that up, that Ben Shapiro said that. Is just
He's I find him nowadays to be more comical than anything. He's just such a squirmy like little dude. Like, and that sometimes I agree with him, but I mean not always, very, very infrequently. He thinks climate change is a hoax too. I'm like, oh, you guys just need to shut up.
yeah, some people are capable of so much intelligence, but not so much wisdom or logic
There
in
you
some fields. It's like they're obtuse in one
go.
direction and they can't see the full spectrum.
Right.
I also saw this thumbnail of Jordan Peterson reacting to the fact that he had to go through social media training by the Canadian government court ordered thing, and it's him and his nympho looking daughter next to him in the thumbnail, and she's all done up with make. She looks like a fucking porn doll, like
She
really.
does. No, you're right. She's got that kind of porno hot thing going on. Yeah.
Right, and it's just all done up, and he's looking angry on it, and it's like they're making a show of themselves, and it's got 1.8 million views. It came out like a week ago, and it's like, wow, like we are truly lost.
Yes. When
And
Jordan
on the
Shapiro, yeah.
Constitution note, if I could have one word with Ben Shapiro, it would be, did you know that the Department of Justice just ruled that climate is not a part of the Constitution? Even
Mm,
though that's like a play on words, because you're guaranteed the right to life, love, like in
right,
pursuit of happiness,
right.
and essentially safety. Like you're entitled to safety and to pursue your own interests and to go forward. But if you're denying a stable climate, then you're going directly against the interest of right. I mean, you follow
Well,
the logic,
life itself is the first target. Yeah.
right, of life. So they've been, and Biden has not made any mention about this, and they've just been blowing off these cases. The Wyoming case with those kids barely was,
Montana.
Montana, sorry. You know, that's just a small home run in a giant ballpark game that we need to play. And even scarier, man, I feel like I'm going on a tangent right now, but
Please.
you have this is the two-pronged doom realist approach that I took today, or that I as I understand it. I don't know. Think of that, what I just said, the Department of Justice ruling against a stable climate, and how much we rely on this neurotic, depressed uh, tech billionaire for so much of our government infrastructure. I mean, he's funding like the war, like the internet service in Ukraine. Like, we're leaving our power in the hands of uncapable, like, man children, and we're blocking our right to even protect ourselves. It's like a complete recipe for disaster.
Yeah, no, that's pretty bad. And like just the centralization of power amongst very few hands is always very dangerous. I
Scary
don't know if I
nonetheless. Yeah, that was my point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I don't know if I mentioned this last time you were on, but like when I was studying system science at Portland State, one of the kind of like statements that was kicked around the department was that any sufficiently complex system tends to be more efficiently functioning when it's decentralized, because there's just too many variables to control by one singular entity. And there ain't much more complex than human societies, especially when you have like 8 billion people in the world. That's why I think I've always liked the idea of local. It's one of the things about the Green Party platforms that I liked. If you just let local communities tend to themselves, tend as being the what is an absolute solution, you'd probably see a lot less bullshit in the world. That's again that's it's a tendency. It's not an absolute. But So that you have like BlackRock, like holds like the majority of like financial
Yeah.
stranglehold on like most of the businesses in the world, and what directly or indirectly, like one organization. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, so if it has problems, that problems just trickle down to all the things that they have control over. That's insanity. Nature's energy sources and its power structures and intensity are decentralized. You don't have a centralized anything in nature. So that should be your first clue. Nothing in nature doesn't, in a certain sense, nature doesn't make mistakes because it's all based in mathematics. Okay, I'm not gonna go there. That's way too deep and abstract. Because I think we would think of it differently, because we don't survive forever or we get hurt or injured by nature, that somehow that's wrong. Well, I think in the grand scheme of things, if you look at it, that's not exactly how it's supposed to go. Anyway, what was this? I don't know. You say something. I just lost train of thought.
A lot of variables you threw out there. But yeah, the centralized thing, what you're talking about, is now prevalent in everything. Everything is centralized under one or two companies, even
Mhm,
pornography. I mean,
mhm.
it's like there's no facet of our world that hasn't been almost tapped, or, let's say that tapped and, you know, streamlined. And that game of musical chairs we play with ourselves, where we're all fighting for these positions of power, um, it's a big recipe for a disaster. At some point it's gonna implode and collapse on itself. And if we're seeing that in real time, the important thing is that we realize that we are witnessing a profound moment in human history, where no point in history. Bernie Sanders wrote a paper or a article in Fox just detailing the climate crisis, and Noam Chomsky, earlier on this year or last year, was like, we're at an inflection point for humanity. And just to witness that, and be awake and aware to this happening right now, um, I wouldn't take it back for anything in the world. You know, really.
It's definitely not a dull time to be alive. I'll just it's
Yeah,
definitely
for
enough to
better or
keep me
for
occupied.
worse. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm taking a really yeah.
Yeah.
sky above approach, bird's eye view of
Mhm,
the
mhm,
picture
mhm,
going
mhm,
on
mhm,
Earth.
mhm. Sure, sure.
Right.
Um, and also like going back to what we were saying earlier about like the 1.5 above 1.5 degrees global degrees probably coming next year is a lot to do with, well, I think that in some areas or a global average we're above it temporarily because of El Nino, right?
Right.
Now
In
whether that I
July.
think,
I think in
huh?
July, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're above it currently, but like I think that that's also a temporary phenomena. So I don't think that they're attributing it to like the global average going up permanently or for long term, like the 1.5. But it could certainly contribute to that going up permanently or long term by next year. El Nino is a big, big deal right now.
Yeah, and we're just getting started with it. I
We're just
mean,
getting started with it. Exactly.
fall, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be wild next year. We're gonna see, like, weather events that are, like, so extreme, dude. Because the
Mhm,
last El Nino in 2016 or 2015, was it
mhm.
caused so much damage and, like, worldwide. I remember there was, like, food price scares, Trump was getting elected, like, it was pretty gnarly, so we're in for a doozy, you know?
Yeah, there's another element to the whole like decay of the empire is the lack of like products on the shelves. Who's going to know what to do with that? Like, what do you mean there's no food left? I don't,
Oh,
like I don't know where to go. I don't grow my own food. I don't know. I can't go hunting.
no,
I mean, I
yeah.
can, but I mean, like, yeah, no, yeah, no, it's crazy, and people are gonna feel like when the pandemic hit, people like were fighting in the stores over toilet paper. I mean, that's just toilet paper. What's gonna happen when it's like food, baby food? There was actually a baby formula shortage. I remember that. People were very upset about that.
Oh, we're ripe for civil violence. Yeah, for sure. The amount of discord, yeah, animosity in this country, you know, at the gas station, like at the grocery
Mhm, mhm,
store, people will cut in line. I mean, you remember you just stated in this episode is like we are a very violent nation, and if
mhm.
you look at our like we're not afraid to everyone is like ready to draw and
Yeah,
itching trigger finger and only in America. I mean, there was just this story again. I want to tie this social enemy, this rot is already exposing itself. Only in America, or maybe like a third world country, would you have a man and his wife. He would murder his three daughters. This was just here in Uniontown in Cleveland. Murdered his three daughters. Normal working guy and CPA wife, and then himself. I mean, like,
that's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not like, and that's one out of many anecdotes about these sorts of things. I know. I don't think we're referring to the same thing because the guy I'm thinking of didn't kill himself, but so it can't be. But like a guy who had a mistress and then decided to be free of his family at the time, he killed his guy, his I think three children and his wife just so he can hook up with somebody else. And like I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, like that's insane. You killed your children. Like, is there anything more evil than that? I can't think of anything. I mean, that's just to go against, I mean, just evolutionarily, the moralities of evolution. How could you possibly even garner the impetus to do something like that psychologically? Not to mention just morality itself,
A demon haunted
the
world
values of human life.
In America,
Yeah.
this place is supposed to be land of the free, happy life, liberty, pursuit of
That
happiness.
that's always been a lie.
Yeah, right. Reminder. Yeah, newsflash. Yeah.
Like I mean, I was just thinking. I mean, are there's people out there that would say something like, if you think that like white supremacy is not truly American, that you don't understand American history. I mean, the country started off with slavery, obviously, and the three-fifths clause in the Article 2 of the Constitution. And, so, even though Amendment 13 ended slavery, if you read past the first sentence of Amendment 13, we actually still do have slavery. It's just the prisoners in jail are literally slaves of the state, literally.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we do have,
and
forced labor is what slavery is. Go ahead, sorry.
sure. And fast food restaurants are essentially sugarcane production facilities just
There you go.
recreated in modern day. It's the same business economics of it.
Yeah.
And just upscaled to, Burger King on every street now. It's like, we
Yeah, no, like the higher ups in these, like, McDonald's and Burger King talk about, like, they're making millions upon millions of dollars for sitting there in their office while these guys are busting their butts over, like, these hot grills and everything else, serving, literally, poison to the people. And they're getting paid, nothing, not like a non-livable wage. And it's just, if it's like close to like feudalism. I mean, like, like the knight just sort of sat there in his little castle and made all the peasants do all the work, and he garnered all the money. When he didn't do anything, and the CEOs who would like sit there and they practice, sit in their offices and practice their golf putts and, like, cheat on their wives with their secretaries and like get paid like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I mean, they're some of the most disgusting people on the planet, and I don't know. It's just a really sad situation. I saw this thing too. It was actually Tucker Carlson. I was really impressed by this. He was talking to, I think it was Brandon Russell, whom I love, and he was talking about how, like, we as a society, we've lost the sense of beauty in architecture. And I'm like, you're absolutely correct. He's like, people used to build like even small modest houses with the idea of at least, it's not just functional as like a place to live, but like so it looked nice. You drive around and, like, you see asphalt and concrete and brick buildings and all these stupid signs for fast food and these everything is so, like, just aesthetically gross and disgusting. That's another element that's going on in this country and elsewhere. Like, I mean, I remember I did Renaissance fairs for a long time, and just these quaint little areas and stuff like that of, you had this enchanting architecture all around because it looked like a 18 or 1590 village, and, like, it was just magic abounded, and it was just fabulous and simple and easy. We all got along really well, and that's that's kind of like the thing I want. I want the charm and beauty back, and, like, because everything is built in such a, like, ugly, disgusting manner.
Yeah, gentrification, these condos all look the same, and
Yeah.
even yeah, again, fast food restaurants, corporate buildings, it's regulated, and it's this back to that topic of centralized power. We gravitate towards a few wanting at the top. And
Mm-hmm.
not all of them are sociopaths or
Mm-hmm.
psychopaths, but, right? But there is that possibility. A lot of them tend to be, not all. And we just couldn't we didn't have the imagination to figure anything else out differently. This is the president, in the White House, has his White House surrounded by gates and police and, everything. It's us, and separate ourselves from them, and that's what we've
Mm-hmm.
always been about.
Yep.
That is the filth. That is the public. They're,
Mm-hmm.
don't let them touch our cars, our nothing, our gated
Mm-hmm.
neighborhoods. Everywhere, still gated neighborhoods. It's not even right. It's just evident in all facets of our life. And what I'm preparing my viewers and I for the experience of seeing suddenly these places being rushed by large groups of people, very likely armed, hungry, and angry.
And pissed, right?
Yeah, for the reality that they are now facing, which by that time will be, too late. It'll be everyone scrambling to make, like, transistors, and, like, how would that even we would not have the social organization to suddenly turn on a dime and do a World War III like effort. I don't see it.
Right.
Even though Bernie and all these people want to, tout this whole, we need a World War like united front against climate. It's like, uh, we can't even, like, buy toilet paper safely. I mean, right?
Right.
COVID just was a glaring reality of our humanity and lack thereof. So, I put up this
Yeah. No.
meme lately. Yeah.
It's tough to imagine, like, enough of out of 8 billion people on the planet to get on the same page immediately and do, like, what needs to be done locally. And each in
Oh
a
my
respect, because
God.
different areas need different types of things to happen. I doubt that's going to happen. My guess is that, we're just going to probably, like you probably believe, it's just going to go to shit and it's going to fail and it's all going to be destroyed, or at least most of it, and nature will just start over again. That's how that goes. You
In
know, you
hundreds of thousands of years, it will. I mean, the damage that we've caused to it will be like extensive and far-reaching
Mhm.
when we're finally gone, the last of our humankind. It'll be, and
Mhm.
it'll still be baked in and going. Um, and this is a realist approach. And I read an article recently. It's like, thank goodness for doomers because they remind us of like how reality the situation is. Like, well, no shit, you know, we're just yeah taking in, in the data and yeah, there's so many things to say on that notion. I The centralized element is, and there's so many, yeah, disappointing. And wait, in preparation for this call, I was going to say, in preparation for this call today, I'm driving around thinking like how privileged we are to be in our safe habitat, here in America, and consuming so much. I mean, just in my single day, I you know threw away this and drove here, did that, turned on this light, and then we're talking about like, you're right. A new baby being born in Zimbabwe right now, or like,
Beautiful. Yeah,
Haiti. Like as we speak right now, there are like
yeah,
in India, Tibet,
millions.
millions of fucking people around the like world, and it's like we have to change every single one of their paradigms and cultures, and we can't even agree on the best way to make blueberry pie. Like, you know, let
Yeah, no,
alone our
and
whole
I
paradigm of how we relate to money and everything. So it's
it's futile. It's insurmountable. Like it's just too grandiose to like be accomplished. In the amount of time it needs to be accomplished. I shouldn't say that like ever. If we have an infinite amount of time, sure, we can get there someday. We don't. We got about 10 years, maybe. Six and a half,
right.
so like I remember the first time I read like the IPCC thing about 2030 and just the reduction of net to net zero by 2030. And this was like, so it's 2023 now. I think it was 2021 maybe. And I remember, well, no, it was 20, something like that. I was like, what? I'm like, what? We have less than 10 years to reduce or we're screwed. I'm like, what? That's insane. And no pun intended, but it really lit a fire under my ass to kind of like do a lot more research. And like, your cat is awesome, by the way. I love cats, especially black cats. Um, and like it really just like freaked me out. I'm like, that's my lifetime. I mean, I'm growing, I've never heard about environmental problems. Not that I pushed it off because like it doesn't include me, but like it always like seemed less urgent to me personally because it was supposed to happen after I was dead. That kind of thing.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh, and I tell my friends, like people are like in local politics and stuff like that. I mean, do you know this? They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, guys, we got like 7 fucking years and like it's over. Okay, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, what? you know? And it really just freaks people out. And not that they're doing enough to change their lifestyles because they're not. Because I think 7 years still seems enough a long way away for them to be like, well, I got a couple years at least to keep partying and do my thing. But yeah, no, it's really frightening stuff. And like another thing I wanted to add to this whole like social, political, economic, and environmental collapse is the notion of like the governments and these centralized authorities in respective areas, and like how they would tend to like deal with the turmoil on the streets. Obviously, they're going to stick the cops on you. And a lot of people think in this country that with the people who believe that there's a war coming in this country, or like at least wars here and like battles here and there, and that kind of thing, kind of like sporadically actualized, is that cops are a large part of that problem for that. Because what the cops are going to protect are the politicians and people's properties. That's who they're going to protect. They're going to
The
protect the
interests of
government,
the rich.
the interests of the rich. And so as people are going into these gated communities with, heavily armed and like pissed, like that, the cops are going to go there and they're going to protect the mansions from invaders and stuff like that. And again, I'm really being descriptive. I'm not being prescriptive. I'm not saying what should or shouldn't happen. I'm just describing what seems to be the case coming up. But the thing is that we got to remember that the cops are like the government's thugs. The government says do this to these people, and they go out and they do it. The cops have oftentimes are violating people's rights and causing bodily harm to these people. And the disregard of rights and suffering is literally the definition of a sociopath, literally. So cops are sociopaths, and that's not good. And I'm obviously not a big fan of them. So just another element to bring into the conversation because like it's gonna like these are like heavily armed forces against the people.
Oh no, you're not in any like part, foul for bringing it up. Remembering today, I just was been watching about this uh people blocking Burning Man, and right, and they're putting up these barricades and people are yelling back and forth. I mean, it's getting violent, and you see the miles of cars like trying to get into the thing stopped, and then of course the cops come and they have them at gunpoint. They literally take out their gun on these people, you know? And that's like, wow,
Yeah, it's crazy.
we should start. What point do we start taking our guns back out on them? Because we're
Oh
getting to
no,
that
that's
point
that's happening.
soon.
That's happening now. I mean, I've seen videos of
Right,
guys
right.
like a cop pulls a gun out and like, oh, I got one too. And that's going to be
Yeah, you
happening.
can go on YouTube and look that up. Yeah.
There are, yeah, I mean, there's, what, 4 million plus, no, 400 million plus guns in the general public. So it's like two per person or something like that on
Oh,
average.
yeah, yeah. Hey,
There's like
I'm a
900, there's like
responsible gun
900.
owner myself. Yeah.
No, I own guns. Yeah. And I'm not giving them up, for mainly for reasons we're talking about. Um,
I look at them like as like power tools, like really cool looking power tools that can poke a hole in one direction. But later, yeah, they're gonna
yeah,
be
no,
like
for sure.
tools for survival.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm not quite there yet, though. I mean, if I had to, I certainly would. There's no doubt. But no, I grew up. My stepdad had guns when I was growing up, and he always took me shooting. And like nowadays, I'm actually, if I may say so, I'm a pretty good shot. So I do it a lot for sport. Like my buddy and I would go to the range, and I just always best him.
Cool. Me
But
too. Yeah.
yeah, well, that's cool.
Yeah. A lot. Yeah.
But I don't know an assault gun, not yet. But I'm not sure I want to buy one of those. I don't know. We'll see. But my just point is like a lot of like this notion that like cops have like this absolute authority over everybody is ridiculous. You know,
No, yeah, to uphold this social order,
yeah, that's a lie.
yeah, and there's some other channels, some other people I subscribe to and follow that they, will back them up and say they're a necessary, reason because otherwise we'd be rapacious apes, murdering and killing each other in the streets, and it's like, no, I beg to
Sorry,
differ. you know, I'm willing to take that. Call me a gambler. I take that bet that you could have a democratically led um, uh, Indians, living in harmony, and of course, fighting with other Indian tribes. Like in any system, there's always like, checks and balance, positives and negatives, but at least it would be more sustainable and more,
right,
less
right,
chaotic. What's the least damaging system we can make?
right.
Let's learn from history and start that in the next 5 years. If we don't, we didn't even try, you
Right.
know?
No, that's very well. That's very well said, actually. Yeah, no, there's actually evidence that I mean, studies have been done, like in the supposed lawlessness of the old West compared to now, like modern day society, as far as homicides and crime rates, stuff like that. We're at 1,000 times more dangerous now in society than it was
Wow.
back in the lawless. They actually somebody did a study on like because people like defer to like Western movies to like argue about like the chaos of the old West, which these are fictional. It's bullshit. Okay, John Wayne doesn't know anything about the old West any more than the person on the street. But like some scholars did studies and accrued all sorts of data. You know how many bank robberies they discovered in the old West from like, I think 1840 to like 1900 or something like that? It was like a 49-50 year range. Nine.
God.
In 50 years, they discovered nine bank robberies. Because the average person thinks they were happening all the time. Well, there was no law, so people were killing. No, they discovered like 40 or something like 25 homicides in like 40 years, something like that. I might be getting the numbers. It was extremely low
Yeah.
compared to now, and it was like literally, if you did the math, it was 100. It's 1,000 times more dangerous now than it was back then. So don't give me, yeah. So like that's just we have more cops now than we ever did. They're militarized. They're more armed than they ever were, and yet society is more dangerous. I wonder if they could explain that to me. If they're
Yeah, it's
if they're
hard
so
not to
great,
draw
it's so necessary and important. Why is that the case? Right?
man, we have some really faulty wiring. I don't think we were all of these issues contribute to the overarching message that we were not capable of living in harmony with this planet or each other, you know,
It's
despite
not.
what John Lennon sung
Mm.
about Imagine and, you know, all this guts and glory stories about freedom and we the people. Like, no, we just couldn't get it together. And so this discussion has been like an anthropological look at our faulty systems, you know, driven so much by emotion and this search for morality. I know Steven Pinker writes about this in his book, like Beyond Good and Evil, and you know what
Mhm.
motivates us to be. And I find that stuff fascinating too because it all ties into the overarching web of our human complexity and how we got to this point. And now we're on break. We've put on the emergency brake, and we have to switch everything up
Mhm.
that we've ever done. And the president is still not declaring a climate emergency.
He won't do it. It's
It's like
ridiculous.
it's like literally bombs are going off. It's like being attacked, like in World War. It's like Nazi Germany's firing, you know, blitzkrieg missiles at us, and we're like, oh no, we're just this is actually the Department of Justice or the ruling declared that that climate change is a generalized subject. That's what we're going with. A generalized subject, so it's not under the Constitution to protect it under life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I keep going back to that, but it's like that's can we nail the coffin in any harder?
No, exactly. And like, I mean, if they're not having it with the definition of climate change or the subject of climate change, why not just environmental health in general?
Or, yeah,
I
or
mean, more
racial
specifically.
equality and agriculture and protection of wildlife and service. I mean, how long it took us just to get anything done. 60% of the charging stations in America. I know we're coming to the end of our chat here.
Isn't that crazy? I just looked. That's crazy. It flew by. But go ahead.
Good times. Always
Yeah,
a pleasure.
you too,
Elon
sir.
Musk owns 60% of the charging stations in America. So anything that has to be done, let's say that's like this is not even worth the conversation, but I'm just saying as a point, there's so many centralized and complicated systems now in play between government, judicial, and police and military and the people and gas prices and the economy. There's so many conjuncturing things that have to like completely turn inverted and
Mhm.
change. And dang, we're in it for a shocker in the next decade.
We really are, and
You
like
know it.
again, like it could be like far more explicit and vivid as early as next year, the end of
No,
this year or next year.
yeah, you're right. I
What
think
I told my Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
sorry.
I think we temporarily passed. I was going to say earlier 1.5 as a planetary average in July. It was the
Yeah,
hottest month ever recorded, and that was
yes,
a crazy ass month. There was heat waves all over
yes,
the planet. Like
yeah,
right, it was all over the news. And so, if we're expecting that as baseline, that kind of crazy world, but all year round, what
right,
does that look like?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So I mean, I texted a bunch of friends and I think I posted on Facebook. I'm like, just pay attention to the next year and a half. I'm like, just watch.
Yeah, for
You
real.
know, it's
If
about to
that
get
isn't
really
the wake
bad.
up call for you that you need in the next 2 years, then you are completely unprepared and will be blindsided in the next 10 years for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My God. Absolutely. Well, I want people to just be aware, and I prefer, safety and peace and all sorts of things, but I don't think that that's going to be as much of the case in the near future as the opposite.
But
So go
but there's
ahead.
people in your community and what you're doing with this channel and my channel is rallying up people with this information early and going through that grief and anger and all those nasty emotion, like understandable emotions no matter who you are. Um and
Mhm.
then you come out the other side and you're like, okay, now we got to deal with how we manage our lives and everything. There's a lot of channels about that for sure.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So go on YouTube and just sort of, type in climate change, environmental atrocities, activism, stuff like that. You're not gonna find a shortage of information on there, and there's gonna be some. As far as the quality of videos, you're gonna get from lesser to greater degrees of quality for sure. I mean, try to find the people like Reagan and Dr. McPherson and like the
Paul
IPCC and
Beckwith. Big
Paul, oh my
recommendation
God,
of
Paul
Beckwith.
Beckwith.
Yeah.
Paul Beckwith is like the shit. I obviously have to work on the lighting because I don't know what just happened here. This is very strange. Anyway, but we're at the end of the show anyway, so that's good. Reagan, that was
Great
fabulous.
show.
Always, I love talking to you. I feel like I might have like blabbed a little more than I should have today. But my first show in the last couple months, so I guess I'm all excited.
You're in open arms. We should schedule this again. You got a new tablet, and you'll set up your lighting.
No, I'm gonna definitely reach out to you again because you're a very cool and important guest to have on. You have lots of insights and what's still going on and everything else. So please check out Regan Parenton's channel on YouTube. Go there now. Check it out. Subscribe, like, watch. Cool.
Groovy.
All right, groovy, as he says. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning into the Illinois Green Party series. I'm your host, David Rych. With again, special thanks to our guest, Regan Parenton. So next time, be good, be green.
Have a good night.